Committee will be in order, and thank you so much for attending today. Today is March the 13th, and we are having a meeting at the Rules Committee on the Skills Act, H.R. 803. And today we have an opportunity to talk about a robust group of ideas, and we're delighted that we have the Rules Committee present and ready today. I would like to, if I could, first defer to the gentleman from Florida to make a special announcement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I have the good fortune today to have two of the interns working in my office, and I'm sure that I surprised them by saying this young lady, Cheryl Justice, is with us, and a member of government in the Netherlands, who is a Tom Lantos fellow, Ofukaya, is also in the audience with us and has been with me for a while. Welcome. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You need Earl Blumenauer, or is that?
Thank you to both of you. I got Cheryl Justice Ofio. Is that how we're pronounced? Ofio Kaya. Congratulations to both of you for not only your service with our dear member from Florida, but for being with us today. This is a whole lot of fun up here, and we're delighted that you've joined us. Today we have an opportunity to talk about jobs in this country, and this is a jobs bill and a jobs creation bill and a job enhancer bill. And I want to thank the Vice Chairman of the Rules Committee, Virginia Fox, a gentlewoman from North Carolina, for all of her hard work in completing this important bill to reform our nation's broken job training system. We're here today because there are 20 million Americans who are looking for new or better employment. While millions of job openings remained unfilled and billions of federal tax dollars are wasted on inefficient job training programs, I believe Mrs. Fox, Dr. Fox, has worked in her specialty area of education and understands this firsthand. So I believe that the Skills Act helps address not only these problems, but will better Americans' opportunities to find work. Each year I meet with small business owners in my district back in Dallas, Texas. And one owner who I meet with every single year is a man whose name is Wayne Applegate, and he's owner of Applegate EDM, and essentially he is a manufacturer. Wayne also has a son who graduated from the Merchant Marine Academy, and I've known him for a number of years and know him to be a devoted American and trying to provide jobs for people who produce great products. Wayne Company uses advanced machinery to manufacture precision-crafted metal products. And over the years, Wayne has explained to me how hard it is to find skilled workers in particular areas and to get them available in the marketplace when he has an opening. And one of the problems he faces is a glaring disconnect between the skills which students learn in job training courses and the skills that are necessary to fill the required positions in his advanced skill set area. Due to this divide, Wayne's company has spent precious time and lots of resources training new employees on how to perform the new duties of their jobs, and while finding that perhaps there are some out there that have that skill, but he has not yet identified. So this legislation before the committee today provides crucial solutions to this problem by requiring that 2/3 of the state and local workforce investment board members are business owners and job creators who understand the needs of local companies and will be a part of trying to find these employees, get them trained and on the job. This bill is an important part of the majority's efforts to get Americans back to work and to make the federal government operate more efficiently with less waste by eliminating duplications in our federal job training programs and streamlining our workforce development system. The Skills Act helps job seekers find jobs, assists employers in finding employees, and reforms the way government can better serve the needs of the business community and the American people who, at a time of need to find long-term employment. Today we have from the Committee on Education and Workforce the distinguished members, first the chairman, gentleman, Mr. Klein, and the distinguished I believe, ranking member, Ruben Hinojosa, my dear friend, who I came to Congress with in the 105th Congress, Ruben Hinojosa. We're delighted that both of you are here. As always, please know that we will accept any written statement that you have without objection. We'll enter that into the record. At the same time, I wish to enter a letter from Mr. Wayne Applegate into the record without exception. Those are exemption. Those are accepted, and would defer now to the gentleman from the chairman of the committee, Mr. Klein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, for allowing me the opportunity to testify in support of H.R. 803, the Supporting Knowledge and Investing in Lifelong Skills Act, the Skills Act. I would like to take advantage of your offer, sir, and enter my written testimony into the record, and then just hit a few points, if I could. This legislation will strengthen the nation's workforce investment system, make our nation more competitive in the 21st century, and help put Americans back to work, just as the chairman said. We've learned a lot through the committee's extensive oversight of the current workforce training system. It's a maze of more than 50 federal programs. It's fostered an unwieldy and confusing bureaucracy. Federal mandates make it difficult for job creators, state leaders, and local officials to provide a dynamic network of support for job seekers. Onerous rules prevent workers from accessing the training they need when they need it, and a lot of taxpayer money is being spent with little accountability. The Skills Act will help fix the broken workforce training system. First, the legislation eliminates and streamlines 35 duplicative and ineffective programs. The bill replaces the current maze of programs with a new workforce investment fund, one simple and flexible source of training and employment support. The Act also strengthens the role of job creators and state and local leaders by increasing the employer majority on workforce investment boards to 2/3 and allowing state and local leaders to determine the rest. This will help ensure that training workers receive is relevant for in-demand jobs. The Skills Act repeals the arbitrary sequence of services requirement, which currently prevents workers from immediately accessing training. They need to be trained to be a welder. This act is designed to let them go into the one-stop center and get referred directly to training to get the skills they need. Finally, the Skills Act provides real accountability over the use of taxpayer dollars by creating common performance measures for services offered to workers. The Secretary of Labor is also required to conduct an independent evaluation of each program once every 5 years. The Skills Act is comprehensive and common sense. The time to act is now, Mr. Chairman. 12 million Americans are still searching for work, while 3.6 million job openings remain unfilled. We've got to address this skills gap. In the months ahead, our debt will reach $17 trillion. And again, this legislation is designed to address all of those issues to get Americans back to work, which will help us, of course, in our goal to reduce the deficit. The House must work its will, and I hope the Senate will recognize the urgent need for reform and do the same. I urge my colleagues to support the Skills Act and a structured rule to provide for its consideration. I yield back.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Hinojosa, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Sessions, and Ranking Member. I don't see Ranking Member Slaughter, and members of the committee. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to testify before you on H.R. 803, the Skills Act, a bill I adamantly oppose, and a bill opposed by 50 national organizations. Today I rise to request an open rule on the underlying bill, and that the Tierney, Hinojosa, and Miller Amendment in the nature of a substitute be made in order. As Ranking Member of the Higher Education and Workforce Training, I understand the urgency of reauthorizing the Workforce Investment Act, WIA, and modernizing our public workforce training and adult education system. In the 15th Congressional District and across America, millions of unemployed and underemployed individuals need education and training to access good family-sustaining jobs. While the economy is moving in the right direction, we must continue to help those vulnerable populations who have barriers to employment and need these federal programs and services to get back on track. Unfortunately, I stand before you this afternoon because in the past 2 weeks, the majority has orchestrated a political process that has been fatally flawed and highly partisan, making it difficult for me and other members of the Education and Workforce Committee to support H.R. 803. In response to this broken political process, I urge my colleagues on the Education and Workforce Committee to walk out of last week's WIA markup. To be clear, I felt that I could not participate in flawed political process that did not allow true bipartisanship and a genuine commitment to serve the American people. At this year's only hearing on workforce investment issues prior to considering this bill, committee Democrats publicly called for bipartisan talks to rewrite the Workforce Investment Act. And on Monday, March the 4th of 2013, Representatives Tierney, Miller, and I sent a letter asking Chairs Klein and Fox to cancel Wednesday's markup and instead hold member-to-member negotiations to see if we could reach a compromise. But we received no response to this request. At this time, Mr. Chairman, I ask that this letter be entered into the record.
Without objection.
In closing, I want to say that during my 16 years tenure in Congress, I have worked with members on both sides of the aisle to address the needs of the American people. In 1998, I served on the Education and Workforce Committee when the Act was reauthorized in a bipartisan manner. As a result, I know what we in Congress can achieve when we work together. Importantly, job training and reemployment services issues have enjoyed broad-based bipartisan support for the last 40 years, and this history must and should continue. I urge the members of this committee to demonstrate that not everything in Washington, D.C. is broken, but allow for an open rule and that the Tierney-Hinojosa-Miller Amendment in the nature of a substitute be made in order. Again, I thank Chairman Sessions and Ranking Member Slaughter for the opportunity to testify today, and I yield back.
Thank you very much. As both of you know, this issue has been widely discussed, not just as a result of, as you discussed, the circumstances surrounding the markup last week, but also, generally speaking, to make sure, I think, Republicans and Democrats to see the needs of this country that are not being met through current requirements and making sure that Americans are prepared and ready for work. So I do welcome today, and we'll take very seriously not just your suggestions of what you're asking for, but we'll also make sure that we try and offer a robust opportunity to allow you to more fully discuss why this is a good bill, why it may not be a good bill under your perspective, and the specific directions we ought to go. With that in mind, the author of the piece of legislation is Vice Chairman of the Rules Committee, and I would yield the time to her at this time. The gentleman, Dr. Fox, is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank the Chairman and the Ranking Member for being here today, and I want to pay a particular thanks to the staff for the hard work that's gone into this bill. It has been, the staff's been working on this for 3 years. We started this process almost 3 years ago, and we had the bill last year in the committee. It passed the committee. It did not come to the floor. And so what my colleague has said about it being a closed process is simply not representative of what has happened. There were many hearings on this bill last year. This bill is very little changed from the bill that passed last year. My concern is that our colleagues are advocating for the status quo. The legislation that has been introduced by them pretty much keeps things the way they are and actually adds programs. The President himself called for this, but we have 3.6 million jobs in this country that cannot be filled right now because we don't have people with the skills to fill them. If the existing process had been working, then we wouldn't have the need to do what we're advocating here. there wouldn't be 3.6 million jobs going begging and 12 million people unemployed. We'd have a system that works. It doesn't work. In this case, it isn't Washington necessarily that's broken. It's the system that Washington established that is broken. So we want people, as the chairman said, I like the expression, relevant. These programs will help people get the education and skills they need for relevant, in-demand jobs. That isn't being done. As someone else pointed out, I believe in the hearing, that what has been being done is job education, skills for the past, not for the future. And we're looking to the future. I was a community college president for many years. Before that, I was a university administrator. I was on a school board. So I know about how these programs have worked in the past. There are silos of funding. They haven't met the needs of the communities. What we're going to do here is to create accountability that has never been created before, and we're going to give the local workforce boards the authority to do what needs to be done at the local level and then hold them accountable. The other thing that the ranking member mentioned was that our colleagues walked out. We were very disappointed in that, very disappointed, because the bipartisan process operates when you come to a hearing, whether the Democrats are in control or the Republicans are in control, you offer your amendments and there's discussion and debate. We are going through regular order. We get complaints that we haven't had regular order. Well, this bill, there couldn't have been more regular order than what this bill has gone through. And yet you all walked out, and what you said was you wanted us to negotiate behind closed doors. Well, we're doing everything we can do to do this up front, give everybody an opportunity to offer their amendments. And you missed that opportunity. You deprived yourself of that opportunity by walking out of the hearing. And we were frankly quite disappointed in that. So I want to say that I think this is a good bill, not because my name is there as the lead sponsor, but because it's right for the United States of America. It's right for those people who are unemployed, and it's right for those people who want to get skills to even improve their lives. I'm home every weekend, and I talk to people who are working very hard in business and industry, and I talk to people who are unemployed and who are very frustrated because they look to their government for answers, and they aren't getting them. And the Skills Act will help move us in the right direction. It isn't the be-all, end-all, but it will strengthen the role of employers. It will help create people with the, it'll help the people who want to go to work get the skills that they need, and it will engage local leaders in creating what's needed, and it eliminates a one-size-fits-all from here in Washington. And I think it's extremely important that we do that, because we know there's a need out there, and I think it's great that instead of, again, you're saying Washington can't work together, this is something that will work out there, and I think we should move the bill expeditiously. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back my time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fox. Mr. McGovern.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think Mr. Hinojosa wanted to respond to Dr. Fox.
Thank you. If
sorry,
you give me an opportunity,
I missed it. Gentleman's right now.
Yeah, no, all right, well, I'll
you would
let
yield
him
me
respond
some time.
to Dr.
Let me
Fox.
say that I am not impressed with the statements that Vice Chairman Fox has made, because I've only had 2 jobs. The first one was president of a food processing company that used job training as we had in our area to be able to reduce the unemployment from 22% down to 6%. So I can tell you that having had the present bill that's in place for WIA for 14 years is shameful, because it should have been revised 6 years later. We tried it again the next 2 and the next 4. We were in the minority for 10 years. And so there were great opportunities to revise it, but there was no way in which you could compare 10 years from 1998, where we actually had Chairman Goodlin call members from one side and from the other side, and they took what they needed to have, and we agreed, and it was done both in the open meeting and behind doors. And there was nothing wrong with it because it lasted 14 years. And I'm saying to you that as an employer who had 300 employees and who used the job training from this program, it did help us. It grew to where we were the national award winners of the best Hispanic minority business in the whole country by the Department of Commerce, presented at the White House by President Reagan. It did work. And I'm just telling you that there's some things that are wrong that could have been fixed. For example, your own member from your side of the aisle asked the question, how is it that only 15% of the money that was sent from Washington was being used to train the students, or rather the adults, in her state of Indiana? And there was no answer by the panelists. That is one of the biggest problems that I had during the 4 years that I was chairman of the subcommittee, when we went from West Coast to East Coast and in the middle to have workforce hearings, that very little money, 1/3 of the money we sent down there was actually being used for training. 2/3 of it was used as fixed expenses and payroll, and it was used for renting buildings, for buying buildings. All of this to say that many of the subcontractors made huge profits. Very little, 1/3 was being used, and they wanted to change that. Put a cap on how much is going to be used for expenses, and that there be at least 60% or more available for training. None of that got into this bill of yours. We could have negotiated that. And there are a lot of people who don't even speak English. They're limited English proficient. There are different populations, young, very young, then they're very senior, who have very special different needs. What you have, you say it's a block grant, we're going to give it to the governors, and they're going to tell us what's going to be done by 2/3 of the board being employers. I've been an employer. I know the advantage when I have 2/3 of the votes of a board. 1/3 would be representing the employees. Mr. Chairman, there could have been discussions, even behind closed doors or open doors, but that didn't happen. We tried it the last 2 times, the last 2 years that y'all were in majority, and almost every vote was taken was partisan. We voted no, and you voted yes. That's no bipartisanship. We had it with Goodlin as chairman. We had it with Boehner. We had it with all those other folks who were before you. It could have been done again. And that's what I have to say, that there was a lack of bipartisanship. I could have accepted some of the things that you wanted, but you all could have accepted some of the things that my side wanted. It didn't happen.
Well, and I appreciate, gentlemen, I know this time belongs to the gentleman, and I don't want to consume that, but I'm delighted that you're here today with an opportunity. I'll be quite blunt. I don't believe we should walk out of our meetings either. And I know that you made a conscious decision based upon a feeling that you had, and I don't begrudge you for that at all. But I'm delighted that you're here today. Gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask unanimous consent to insert into the record a dear colleague that was authored by Representatives Tierney, Hinojosa, and Miller, which lists over 40 organizations, a very diverse group of organizations who have voiced their concern or opposition to the Skills Act as written. It really runs the gamut. And I guess and before I begin, I'm curious why we have an emergency meeting here today. Why does this have to be considered under an emergency meeting? I mean, if it was next week, why is this an emergency meeting?
Thank you very much. That's really a valid question. I think everybody in this committee has known for a number of weeks that this would happen in a review of the legislation, the paperwork Evidently, there was a misspelling or a typo, and so there was a change of that. So because there was a change of text, I hope, honest about it. We said it's not the same text. There was a change of a few words, and so
I mean,
it became an emergency meeting.
I appreciate.
It's certainly not a surprise emergency.
Well, but, you know, if anything should be considered an emergency with regard to jobs, and job protection and job creation, it ought to be, you know, a measure to figure out a way to get out of this sequester mess, which is going to, according to CBO, cost us 750,000 jobs. I mean, that's an emergency. That's what that to me is what we should be doing here today. The gentlelady from North Carolina said that because we've done hearings last year and the year before, that somehow, you know, that constitutes an open and transparent process. I remind the gentlelady that this is a new Congress, and that we have 84 new members of Congress. That's a significant change. And so this notion that we don't have to do hearings this year because we've done them previous years and that constitutes an open process, I don't think is valid. And I don't think that's the way we should approach it.
Would the gentleman yield?
Happy to yield to the gentlelady.
Well, I just want to point out, there was a hearing for this bill. I didn't mean
Right.
to imply
think one
that
hearing,
what
right?
happened last year should substitute for the hearing that occurred this year.
And from what we heard from the minority, that they were not satisfied with that hearing. And again, I would think this is a subject that probably would require more than one hearing, but that's me. I want to focus on one issue, if I could. You know, I do a lot of work on hunger and nutrition issues. I work a lot with people who are on the SNAP program, and the Skills Act, as it is written, eliminates state SNAP agencies' ability to design employment and training programs for SNAP clients. And instead, they can only use the SNAP E&T funds to provide services to SNAP clients under states' workforce investment boards. And the problem with that, GAO did a study that found that the SNAP E&T participants generally are not served by other employment and training programs and have limited education and work histories, characteristics that make obtaining employment difficult. And the program, as it currently operates, is actually pretty effective with regard to SNAP beneficiaries. In my city, where I'm from, in Worcester, in 2011, 63% of those who completed the training found employment, and 76% obtained their GED certificates. That's not a bad record. But here's the deal, and this is why hearings are important, because there are complexities here that need to be addressed. I'll give you an example. Some of us fear that some households will lose their access to food assistance as a result of this. I mean, childless, unemployed adults generally cannot participate in SNAP for more than 3 months out of every 3 years unless they are enrolled in certain types of training programs for 20 hours per week. In this legislation, the workforce investment boards are not required to provide work slots that meet these conditions, and state SNAP agencies are no longer able to provide additional services. As a result, if jobs are not available, some poor individuals who are willing to work could lose their SNAP benefits. And again, I mean, maybe this is an unintended consequence of the way this is designed, but the fact of the matter is, I am very, very concerned that the changes in this bill will not only not help people who are on SNAP who desperately want to get off of that public assistance and get into a job. This bill will make it more difficult for them to get into a job because it will not require that some of the challenges that a lot of SNAP recipients face will be addressed. And then in the end, we'll actually get people who will lose food benefits. So I'm not sure how that helps anybody here. But maybe it's the bill was sloppily written, or I don't know. But I mean, maybe this is an unintended consequence, or maybe it is intended to try to to kill a program that seems to be working. But I'm worried that people are going to lose their food benefits in addition to not being able to get a job. I don't know if anybody has any comments on this.
That there are groups that will be hurt by eliminating or by comprising 35 programs into a very small number of programs. And I was talking about disabled veterans, talking about those who have worked for a company for 10, 15 years, been loyal, but the company shut down because of a bankruptcy or financial crisis. When they go to get retrained, you find out that they have a third grade literacy
Right.
program. There's nothing in this new program that is going to ensure that those folks will be served. And that is what is wrong, that we had no time to sit down and help those special needs groups that are being hurt by this new program.
And in fact, the GAO said, and I'll quote, "Many SNAP participants are not ready for many program services, such as training classes offered by programs at the WIA one-stops, because they lack basic skills such as reading and computer literacy that would allow them to use those services successfully." And it said, "We have performance standards to discourage programs from serving the most disadvantaged workers." And the GAO reported a reluctance amongst state agencies to provide intensive services to SNAP participants due to concern that doing so would adversely affect the program's performance measures. Again, I mean, one of the challenges we have, and I say this all the time in this committee, is that we have a group of people out there that, who desperately want to work, desperately want to get out of public assistance, but we are not providing them the ladders of opportunity to get out of public assistance. And under this bill, one of those ladders of opportunities seems to have been removed. And I'm very, very concerned about that. Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you have any comments on this or...
Yeah, thank you. I disagree. I think that the bill does address that specifically. I can read some text for you if you'd like here, but in general, the Skills Act sets aside a portion of funds to create a statewide program to assist individuals facing unique barriers. Does that on purpose. And specifically to the SNAP program, I'll just pick up here, it says a description of how the local area will serve the employment and training needs of dislocated workers, including displaced homemakers, low-income individuals, including recipients of public assistance, such as the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, long-term unemployed individuals, including individuals who have exhausted entitlement to state and federal unemployment compensation, English learners, homeless individuals, individuals training for non-traditional employment, youth, and so forth. That is addressed in here specifically.
Right, but the GAO report, I mean, going back to the GAO report, it says that these, that WEIR is not a, agencies, have not provided the kind of services that these people need.
It's not working well. That's why we need to redo the bill.
No, but we do have a program that does work well. It's the supplemental, the SNAP Employment and Training Program. Actually, what I'm trying to say is it is working. That particular program is actually helping people, the most vulnerable, get the skills that they need to be able to, and they're having a success rate. What this bill does is it, basically kind of removes the SNAP Employment and Training Program from being able to design the kinds of programs, correct me if I'm wrong here, design the kind of programs that actually are unique to to many of the people on SNAP to help get them out of poverty. I mean, again, I am, and again, if that is the case, then you end up with people not being able to comply with the, with the requirements that they need to comply with in order to get SNAP benefits, and they lose their food benefits as a result. I'm not sure your language addresses what the GAO expressed as a concern.
We believe it does, and we believe this will provide them better services.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'll just close the problem with that, and I would just say again, maybe additional hearings would have been helpful. But the experts who work with SNAP, the experts who work on some of these programs, have said to me that the Skills Act falls far short, and actually might create a bigger problem. So I thank both of you for your comments, and again, I wish this were a more bipartisan process. I mean, it should have been. This should have been something we both sides should have been able to come together on. I yield back my time.
The gentleman yields back. Before I recognize Mr. Bishop, I'd like to point out to the ranking member that in the 110th and 111th Congress, there were 100 bills that came to the floor that had an education and workforce referral that never had a hearing in education and workforce. I don't believe any of that the Education Workforce Committee has ever had any history like that under Republican leadership. And I'd also like to point out that you pointed out what wasn't done when the Republicans were in the majority, but you all were in the majority for 4 years, and you did have the opportunity.
Well, I've had
to do
16
this.
years, Madam Chair.
I'd like to recognize now Mr. Bishop, if I could. Mr. Bishop.
I just have the distinguished chairman who's left the room, promised that Mr. Hinojosa would have an opportunity to be able to speak his mind. And I just out of fairness, I think when anybody makes, whether it's Mr. Hinojosa or Mr. Klein, if anybody makes a kind of I would say, somewhat of a political statement that and it brings into question something that somebody said, they ought to have an opportunity to respond. I just think that's
Mr.
polite.
Hinojosa, would you like to respond?
Yes, definitely. There's no question that out of the 16 years, 10 were under Republican rule, majority. And when it came up to reauthorizing, while you all were in control, it was full of poison pills that our side could not take. So when it went to the Senate, it died there. You all passed it because you all had a much bigger majority than we had. So it's not about other bills that you say that didn't have hearings or had hearings. Under WIA, we were very bipartisan. I could see it. I'm an employer. I'm a businessman. And to be able to sit down with Boehner, to be able to sit down with Goodland, to be able to sit down with those who are in the leadership and say, okay, what can you take of our side? And we would take it. And then they would say, all right, we'll accept this and we'll accept that. That's fine. I'm in the minority. I'm satisfied with a compromise. But with you, it's not that way. We simply got nothing in terms last session, not this one, but the last one. You were chair then. And so all I can say is, if we had had another 30 days, as I requested on one-on-one when you and I spoke, I was the ranking, you were the chair at that hearing, I said, let's take 30 days and let's have some meetings with the leadership of both sides and let's see what you can accept of ours and we'll see what we can accept of yours, but let's come out with a bipartisan bill. You gave me this, well, we did it last year in the last session. Well, it's just like he said, there's 85 new members now. Even our committee in education was shrunk from 50 to 40, and now we have a lot of new members in that committee. You could have taken another month. Hell, if we went 14 years with the old act, we surely could have gone another 30 days, but you said no.
Mr. Hinojosa, I have to say that your argument rings a little hollow since you all walked out and never offered any amendments.
It takes a lot of courage to do what I did. Let me tell you that.
Great. Mr. Chairman, did you want to say something?
In the interest of moving on, I'll hold back on that, but I obviously have a few things to say about bipartisanship and how taking your time to attack the other side and then walk out doesn't foster real bipartisanship.
Thank you. Mr. Bishop.
Gee, thanks. This is a cheery day already. I'm impressed. I welcome you both here. I am an alumnus of this committee. I was there under the 4 years when we were in the minority, and that's maybe one of the reasons why now I'm here instead of on the committee. I guess there's pain in all sources. I do have like 7 questions I'd like to ask. And I think Mr. McGovern started on the path of one, but I just want to reemphasize it in some particular way. But let me do the first one. I guess this would be to you, Mr. Chairman. Last year, in the President Obama's State of the Union address, he said, I want to cut through the maze of confusing training programs so that from now on people have one program, one place to go for all the information and help that they need. How does this bill actually reach to the standard that President Obama set in that State of the Union address?
Thank you for the question. It falls just a little bit short, but it is a giant step in that direction. When the GAO came out with its report identifying 47 programs showing a lot of duplication, only 5 of those programs had ever been evaluated. We agreed with the President that we ought to do something about that maze. We ought to simplify and streamline, and that's what the Skills Act is doing. It's taking a giant step towards what we heard the President say.
So, and I'm glad you mentioned the General Accounting Office report. That was in 2011 when they came up with that?
Or 10.
10 or 11? 11. And I understand, because I received different ones, it's either 35 or 47 programs that they said in 9 different agencies, and either 27 or 44, depending on which report I read, they said were duplicative and serve similar populations. So I'm under the assumption that the Skills Act here is trying to create some efficiency in all of these programs. The 44 programs in 9 different agencies, to try and consolidate them, is an effort of some kind of efficiency.
Right. We're trying to make the system much more efficient, much less confusing, much more responsive to the workers or the people who would like to become workers to get the training they need to fill the vacancies that employers have are looking for. Under the current system, if you visited your one-stop center, you may have gone in there and seen a whole lot of people busy. They were learning maybe resumes or something, but they're not getting the training that they need. What we've done in this legislation is make it easier for somebody who's coming in, knows they need to be a welder because there are openings there, to be able to get that training and be the welder, and only has one place to go and not have to sort through a whole bunch of different programs.
It was mentioned by others already that there are certain targeted groups, low-income individuals, Native Americans, dislocated workers, workers with disabilities, veterans. Does this bill require the states to do something about certain target groups?
It does, and for example, for Native Americans, the way the bill is written, it requires a set-aside, 1% set-aside, that actually gives more money for Native American training, education, than it did before. And I read some of the text from the bill that specifically addresses populations which have obstacles. And some of those that we mentioned before, people with disabilities and English language learners and so forth, that specifically addresses that.
So in the bill, does it mandate that the states come up with a program for these targeted groups?
That they address them, right, not create whole separate programs. We don't want to recreate the 35 programs. They address the people with those needs.
Does the bill require a certain percentage of the funds that they go into to make sure that they are addressing these targeted groups?
In some cases, Native Americans would be the example.
Mr. McGovern came up with a program that by all intents and purposes, is considered successful. Does this bill prohibit the states from continuing on with successful programs?
It gives them a lot of flexibility. So without recreating from the start a program that's been put in here, it allows them to address that program.
To change it, to modify it, depending on the needs of the locality?
Exactly.
All right. Maybe, Mr. Nyoja, I could ask you a question as well. One of the other commentaries that I saw here said that there were 19 different mandates from the federal government on who should serve on state and local boards, but it did not ever specify what those mandates were. Can you give me an example of some of the mandates of who had to serve, the federal government on who had to serve on these local state boards that ran these 44 different programs?
I was on this committee when we chose to give 51% to the employers and 49% to the employees. And that was fair because the employers had 51%, they had the jobs, but they needed the employees. They needed a trained workforce. So 49% was certainly acceptable. But to change it and have 2/3 representatives from the business community and 1/3 for the employees and the groups that are representing them is unfair. Very unfair.
Can you give me some example of the other 18 then mandates of who had to serve on boards?
I don't understand your question.
The fact sheet said there were 19 different federal mandates, that demanded certain kinds of people had to be on boards, or the boards had, and the state and local governments had to be affected some way.
I'd have to ask
I don't know
the
what the
technicians
examples
on the staff that would give you the types of representatives that needed to be on there, but unions had to be represented, and women had to be represented, and which are the
It's like
ones?
trade union, from the representative workers, but there's.
Gentleman, the testimony is by the gentleman. You can speak with him if you'd like to. I'm not interested in gentleman testifying.
The local workforce investment boards shall have membership representatives, that's for the business. And these should, representatives of labor organizations for local areas in which employees are represented by labor organizations, nominated by local labor federations. It would have representatives of community-based organizations, including veterans, individuals with disabilities. It must have representatives of economic development agencies. It must have, including the private sector economic development entities, and representatives of each of the one-stop partners, and may include some individuals or representatives of entities as the chief elected official in the local area may determine to be appropriate.
Is that the only area of code where you have mandates of who sits on these boards, or are there other mandates in other codes? And I guess the other question would be, to those individuals, are those part of the employee side, or are they part of the employer side?
It would be part of the employee, because in the businesses, which is the 51%, it says representatives of businesses in the local area who are the owners of businesses, chief executives or operating officers of businesses, and other business executives or employers with optimum policy-making or hiring authority.
Okay.
It must include businesses with employment opportunities that reflect the employment opportunities of that area, and it will be groups appointed from among individuals nominated by local business organizations and business trade organizations. I was the employer. That's the group that I represented when I was
Are there other places
the employer.
in code, though, where there are other requirements that are placed on various kind of boards? If there are 44 different entities around there, and I'm assuming there are 44 different kinds of boards?
WIA is 80% of the funding, and under WIA there are just two boards. There's the state board and the local boards. But then separately, there's also the Vocational Rehabilitation Act for people with disabilities, and they have, an advisory committee to people with disabilities. And I guess under adult ed, there's also some advisory committee for adult ed.
There's no question that the reason that we had these letters of opposition, so many of them, is because they read the bill and they saw that there was going to be lack of representation when you cut it down to 30% on the board that could speak up for them when something is going wrong.
One of the concerns I do have, if you're trying to get something that's very efficient, if you have multiple boards and you were very good in showing out there are different kinds of boards, vocational board, disability board, yada, yada. Each board would have a different kind of setup to it that would be, I'm assuming, part of these 19 mandates that was listed here. You were looking anxious. Do you want to say something about that?
Thank you. The workforce investment boards are what we're talking about here, local or state boards. And I don't know why we've broken it out into employers and employees, because there are a number of agencies here in the 19. I don't know why the local educational entity is employee versus employer, for example, community-based organizations, representatives of economic development agencies. The thing is, these things have grown and grown and grown and made the boards less efficient. We do not, in the language of the Skills Act, preclude any of these organizations from being on the board. It's decided at the local board level who's going to be represented on that board. So if you're in an area where the board thinks it's very important to have a local union, for example, they'll be on the board.
I have no employable skill. I'm a school teacher. Which is why when you say these organizations tend to multiply and morph as time goes on, gee, I can't relate to that at all, except in the real life world. Let me ask one other legitimate question here. How does this bill impact Job Corps?
How does it impact
Thank you.
job?
Job
what?
Corps.
Job
Oh, the
Corps.
Job Corps.
It leaves Job Corps in place. There was a lot of discussion about that. It does call for an evaluation of Job Corps centers and to look at the lowest performing Job Corps centers, which the administration is already doing that now. They're underfunded pretty significantly. It does not eliminate Job Corps centers.
The fact that we're going to try to reduce our federal expenditures tells me that we're going to be reducing the amount of money for WIA. And less money, and yet there is nothing in the new bill that says that they must control the expenses of how they run that operation of WIA so that 60% or more will actually be spent on training those men and women who come for training. There's nothing that speaks to that. Otherwise, the members on the Republican side would not have questioned why was it that it was ridiculously low, 15% in Indiana.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, the legislation doesn't cut spending. The CBO has already come out. It freezes spending, level spending, authorizes, remembering that there are some mandatory spending. It freezes that as well. It's 0 on the CBO score. And there's discretionary spending. And so it will be subject to appropriations like all other programs. Our goal in terms of spending was to make the money spent much more efficient, much more responsive to the people who are looking for work, to the people who are running these workforce investment boards, to the states, to get better efficiency out of the money. It doesn't cut the money.
I appreciate that. And I should just tell you, I had a personal reason for doing that. I personally like the Job Corps program, very much supportive of it. But and I wanted to know how this interfaced, because under the present system, when the Labor Department determined that they needed to save some money, they determined to cut slots of kids who could attend Job Corps. We tried to work with the centers to find other efficiencies so they could meet that savings without cutting the number of kids. And unfortunately, the Labor Department didn't care. They made sure that we cut the slots anyway. I'm very bitter about that concept. That's the status quo. Apparently, as I'm looking at this bill really has nothing to do with that entire issue. But there is something transcendental that goes along with that. I do have another question that deals with simply the mix of federal and state spending that go into these programs, but maybe I can do that off board, because I've already taken too much of your time, Mr. Chairman. I thank you. Thank you both of you.
I'm glad to hear you talk about the young people and the Jobs Corps, because it helps the teenagers and those that are probably 18 to 24. And that's the group that has the highest unemployment in our country. It crosses Hispanics, blacks, whites. They all have a high unemployment. And so that really needs to be addressed.
Yeah. I appreciate you saying that, too, because I agree with the problem in these particular areas. I also agree that what we're doing currently is not addressing that problem. That's one of the concerns I have. So I definitely hope that whatever comes out of this particular bill, when you come to the Senate, whatever the conference comes up with, it's a step forward, because the need, as you said, that is desperate and it's real. And I am concerned that we seem to be stumbling along on makeshift programs without coming up with a real solution that improves the product. So I hope this is an effort to actually improve what has been done in the past in some real different efforts. And apparently I'm yielding. Yes.
Just one quick point that has not been made that I think needs to be made in line of your line of questioning is that the hope from this legislation is that because of consolidation of administration, that there will be huge savings that then would allow for more direct services to the people who are supposed to be served, and not only at the federal level but at the state level. I got interested in this when I was in state government and realized how much money was being spent at the state level on administrative costs for these programs that could be saved if they were consolidated. So thank the gentleman for yielding.
I'm desperately trying to get out of this queue. I'm yielding back now.
Gentleman yields his time in desperation.
Thank you.
Mr. Hastings.
Mr. Chairman, I would like just to take a personal one. I believe that would being across-the-board sentiment among our colleagues and those who are here, staff and otherwise, and that is to congratulate those of the Catholic faith for the new Pope that's Argentinian and assumes the name St. Francis I. And certainly all of us offer our prayers and hopes. I believe personally that it's a good day for the Americas. I'm not Catholic, but I do believe that the future of the Catholic Church lies in a large part of the development that's going on in the Americas. And I just wanted to take a moment to reflect on that, and great hopes. One of the things in his biography is that he is a firm believer in social justice. I wish that he could offer infusion to this damn place with some social justice. But let me turn to the offering of the statement of administration policy by unanimous consent with the chair's consent. I've offered the...
Without objection.
In the statement of administration policy, it's reflected that H.R. 803 would freeze funding for the next 7 years. And they go on to say, and would fail to support efforts to innovate and replicate effective approaches. I just simply do not know, and I have not read the entirety of 803. Does it freeze funding for 7 years, Mr. Chairman?
For 6 years, it does.
All right. So they were at least part of the way, which is interesting because as you're about the business of innovating and avoiding replication or replicating those things that are good, it's kind of difficult. I was in meetings, and I'm sure you have been, where people are talking about 10 and 20 and 40-year budgets, and I'm always fascinated with that fiction because there's just absolutely no way that any of us can predict tomorrow, let alone 40 years away or 20 years or 10 years away. It's crazy what we sell to the American public here, in my judgment, sometimes. That said, Mr. Chairman, you made the comment about boards and the fact that this particular legislation will allow for local leaders to make a determination as to the board members. And you did go on to say that as presently constituted, there obviously in some places I guess would be inefficiencies. My question is, how does it become more efficient when you have 2/3 employers and disallow many of the voices that the present legislation allows for?
Thank you. It doesn't disallow participation by any participant who is on the board now. It doesn't disallow it. They can be put on the board. The reason that we think it's important to have the large majority of employers is that's where the jobs are. So we're trying to match job needs by employers, job openings, skills that they need with people coming in who are looking for work. We've heard a lot of discussion, a lot of testimony on that. I've talked to my local workforce board members. They have employers already on the board, but that's where the jobs are, and that's where we're trying to make the connection between a community college, for example, or a for-profit school, or a university, wherever they're going to get the training and the jobs that are available. That's what we're trying to reach.
You know, when you close something, and I don't, different than Dr. Fox, I do not argue for the status quo. I think that there are meaningful changes that you make in 803, and many of them I agree with. But when you do close something, there is that possibility that you're going to leave somebody out. And when I think rural-urban, for example, if, and the tendency is, for example, in our row that's going on about post offices, it's easy for those of us that live in large communities that have circulation centers to close a few post offices and perhaps do fairly well. But in rural communities, they have an entirely different set of circumstances. You mentioned welding twice. Someone else mentioned welding. I represent a foreign territory. We have some machinists that work in a few of the places, but I would be more interested in people training for solar panel work and things along those lines than just one thing. And I want to point out a good example of why diversity writ large, not black on white or Latino or Anglo or anything like that, why it's important. If I use my good friend from Utah as for example, a good training program there might very well be to save people that have gone up on mountains, and you train somebody how to help people who are in distress in the mountains. That wouldn't do so hard in Fort Lauderdale. We need lifeguards. They may go snowboarding, but we go waterboarding. There are different strokes for different folks in this society. Some like Pepsi and some like Coke. But the fact is, I have served on a workforce board, and I've served on one that had employers, that had disabled people, that had women, and I never felt that there was an inefficiency. I did feel, as Mr. Hinojosa has pointed out, that we spent too much money on administration and on looking for new buildings and renting something, and not enough on the training. Mr. Hinojosa, you wanted to respond to something?
That was a very important concern that I had.
All right. Yesterday, we looked at legislation and voted on it today that prevents the TANF program from making exceptions to existing rules that would make it easier for Americans to find work. So now we're talking about eliminating 35 programs. And I guess my designed to help people find their way into the workforce. Basically saying, I guess, that we'll just cross our fingers and the one big fund will give every applicant attention that they deserve. So, Mr. Chairman, when you spoke earlier about GAO, and Mr. McGovern spoke about GAO, how did you arrive at the position that these programs are duplicative of one another? And the question I guess I have is, was there an independent evaluation, or were there independent evaluations of the programs that are ongoing at this time?
Yeah, thank you for the question, and thank you for your observation about the white smoke and the Pope. We're here arguing this, and another billion people are, frankly, much more interested in what's happening there. Not that this isn't important, and I appreciate the question. The Government Accountability Office brought out the report. Part of that report showed that of these 47 programs and 9 agencies, only 5 of them ever had a real independent examination as to whether or not they even worked. So that discussion has been a bipartisan discussion back and forth that came out in the last Congress, and it just made sense to us to look at all the programs. There are more than 47, by the way, which is why the numbers sometimes don't look like they add up. Some of these programs haven't been funded for years. To look at the totality of them, see where we thought we could eliminate them and put them into this consolidated form. Some of them couldn't be, it didn't make sense to be, but we just think you're going to get much more efficiency, much more bang for the buck. So when we talk about the level funding, that's what we believe we're getting out of this. More money actually going to train people.
Were there independent evaluations?
Independent of
the programmatic structure as it presently exists. I'm not talking about GAO. Have you done independent evaluations to come to the conclusion that these were duplicative, the ones that you're talking about eliminating?
I have not done an independent evaluation. We use the GAO for that, but I would reiterate that the GAO said there were only 5 programs that really had been examined to see whether or not they were effective.
All right. Well, if the Act eliminates, as it does, and streamlines 35 ineffective and duplicative programs, where's the data that says that these programs are ineffective? And if they're ineffective, how will creating one big fund make them more effective? I just fail to understand the logic in that.
Well, part of the logic is that there are only 5 that were examined to see if they were in fact effective. The others are just sitting out there being funded year after year, or not funded in some cases. And that didn't make any sense to us.
All right, Mr. Hinojosa.
Hastings, we never in the committee saw a comparison of those programs as you asked. And I had asked the Office of Management and Budget some questions, and I just was handed a statement, which, Mr. Chairman, I would ask unanimous consent that
Without
be
objection.
accepted into the record. It's dated March the 13th, 2013, under House Rules, Executive Office of the President, Office of Management and Budget, and it's entitled Statement of Administration Policy. The administration strongly opposes H.R. 803, the Supporting Knowledge and Investing in Lifelong Skills, as ordered, reported by the House Education and Workforce Committee. And without reading it all, these are some very strong points, Mr. Hastings. The Office of Management and Budget says that this nation should be doing everything it can to help people find a job or build their skills to advance in their careers or seek a new one. Additionally, it is imperative that employers have the skilled workforce they need, which is something I mentioned in my statement. However, any effort to streamline the current system must allow for sufficient funding to meet the needs of workers and job seekers, as well as adhere to the certain core principles. It says, while H.R. 803 takes some positive steps, the bill does not adhere to the administration's key principles for reform. H.R. 803 would freeze funding for the next 7 years and would fail to support efforts to innovate and replicate effective approaches. The administration remains committed to working with the Congress on bipartisan legislation to improve the nation's workforce investment system. There is no question that this bill that we are wanting to take to the House floor is not what is going to help us save all those, not save, but train those people who are unemployed. It doesn't have
I readily
the
understand that,
partisanship
and-
that it needs, and the administration through this Office of Management and Budget are saying it,
All right.
strong and in writing.
All right. I just believe that different communities have different needs, and the programs designed to fit those needs would not necessarily be more advantageous on the single general program. I don't have the same trust in the significant number of governors that you do, but I do know my colleagues come here one day and argue states' rights, and then they come back the next day and argue against states' rights, and I'm beginning to get confused about what y'all really do believe.
Gentleman yields his time. Mr. Nugent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it's always difficult to follow great minds because such great questions to our panelists, but I do have a couple. Well, first of all, I want to go back to Mr. Hastings and agree with you in regards to, I think it's a great day, I'm not Catholic, but to have a Pope from the Americas is fantastic. Some of the questions that were asked, I want to go back, though, to the President's letter. And, Mr. Chairman, I guess this question is directly to you. Does this bill eliminate programs for veterans?
This bill does some consolidating of veterans programs. It leaves some of the existing programs exactly intact as they are right now. It requires that you have VSO representation at the one-stop centers. So we believe that this provides better, more effective, more efficient training to veterans. If I could, just for a minute, I actually think I'm answered incorrectly to Mr. Hastings' question when he asked about if there were independent studies. If you count the administration, if you count the reports from the department as independent, there actually are a number, and I had it here in my hand, but I wasn't thinking of it as an outside. So, for example, the Women in Apprenticeship and Non-Traditional Occupations WANTO program was examined by the administration, and they concluded that it should be eliminated. The administration proposed for elimination under the President's fiscal year 2013 budget request, and that's true of many of these programs. So it's not an outside entity, but internal, and I'm sorry.
No, it's very good. Answers another good question.
Not my time.
I'm questioning the chairman at this point. Does this affect, or does it take away programs from low-income individuals?
No, sir. Again, thank you for that question. The text from the bill that I read earlier talks, specifically tasks the WIBs to address populations with particular obstacles, English language learners, folks with disabilities, and so forth. Those are included in the language of the bill.
I appreciate those comments because it appears that the President says that it will affect all of those programs that you just mentioned. So I guess I'm not clear.
I'm not entirely clear on the President's message either, because the President is the person who came out and said we got to clear up this maze, make it easier, make it one place to go, and that's the direction that we take in this legislation. So I'm not overly impressed with the.
Well, I mean, that was his statement, I know, in 2012 at the State of the Union, because I agreed with it. I was impressed that he came up with that idea. Did we see any movement when he did that, when he said that? Was there movement to consolidate?
There was movement in Congress as we moved to move towards this legislation.
And I have many other questions, but I'm afraid my throat's going to give out from, and Mr. Hastings knows this one because he fought this, I think, 2 weeks ago. But the dollars that are set aside, I understand it's frozen from, I think it is a Florida flu bug, but the dollars that are set aside, $18 billion. Now, that's what was set aside prior to this consolidation of programs. Are those the same dollars? I mean, have we reduced the dollars from $18 billion?
Those aren't exactly the same numbers. I don't have the CBO report here. Maybe they can hand it to me. But the dollars are almost exactly the same. We did level fund the program. Mandatory doesn't change a single dollar, it's zero across the way, and discretionary is, in a rounding error, the same. Just it stays the same.
Do we normally see when we consolidate programs, I mean, do we see efficiencies because you don't have duplicate levels of, particularly as Mr. Hosa said, I mean, you have all these administrators. Do you save money by consolidating?
We believe that will spend the money much more efficiently. More money will actually go to job training. I know we've heard the opposite view here, but because this provides much more flexibility to the local boards, and as Mr. Hastings said, it doesn't do any good to train people for mountain rescues in Fort Lauderdale. We just believe it's that you get a much better product if the local boards have the flexibility to address the needs of their employers and their potential employees.
One of the areas that, in meeting with employers, particularly back home, and I know Mr. Noza would probably want to respond to that, and I will give you time to respond to the questions I gave to the chairman, sir. But they always talk about the relevancy of the training that's provided locally to meet their workforce needs. And have these programs been effective in training a local workforce for the local jobs that are available? And we're not talking about, we don't have Silicon Valley jobs here in my district.
Yeah, again, thank you very much for the question. That's the heart of the problem we're trying to get to. Only 14% of the people who walk in the door actually walk out at the end with the training and the job at the end of this process. That is shockingly inefficient and ineffective and does not address the needs of the employers who are trying to get people with the skills they need, and it certainly doesn't help the people that are looking to get the skills that they need for a job.
Mr. Hanoza. Yes, sir.
Programs eliminated by this new bill, or look at item number 25 that is eliminated, it's number 26 that is eliminated, Disabled Veterans Outreach Program. And the next one, number 27, is eliminated, Local Veterans Employment Representative Program. That really got my attention because I have a very, very large group of veterans. And Mr. Bishop, you showed a lot of interest in youth.
What
Eliminated, just answering your question a while ago.
Well, my question would be is what exactly were those two programs? Because I'm certainly very strong supporter of veterans since I have 3 sons that are currently serving, but also to all our veterans, myself being one. I want to know, sir, what was eliminated, and is there something taking its place?
I think it's important to recognize that this is a consolidation. So the training for those veterans doesn't go away. You just have eliminated all the individual silos, all the individual reporting requirements, all of the bureaucratic overhead that goes with this. But the requirement to provide the education and training doesn't go away.
So the dollars are still there.
The dollars don't go away. You level fund this. The dollars are there. The overhead is reduced. The requirement to provide the training is still there. It is just much more effective, much more efficient, much more responsive to employers and those seeking work than the stovepipe system that we have been dealing with in these programs. Again, repeating, almost all but 5 of them have never even been evaluated to see if they work. We just spend money on them.
Yes, sir.
But the second one says Local Veterans Employment Representative Program. It's eliminated.
Would the gentleman from Florida yield?
How can somebody speak up for the veterans if they've eliminated that program?
I would be glad to yield to.
I believe that Mr. Hinojosa is using an inappropriate term. This program does eliminate 2 programs. Those are programs actually that the President recommended eliminate.
Those are 2 programs the President wanted to eliminate?
Yes. Well, I believe one of them is, and one of them is not in existence hasn't been funded for a long time. And the other programs are not eliminated. The point that the chairman is making is the programs are consolidated, and I believe Mr. Hinojosa's comments saying they are eliminated is not accurate. They are consolidated.
I think if I could, picking up on your point, just one more point I want to make clear is that we require in the bill, in the law, that you have a local veterans representative in every single one-stop, which isn't required now. So when a veteran walks in the door, he's got somebody there in the building that he can go to be referred to the training or education that he needs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you very much. Mr. Polis.
Well, I know we have votes, so I'll be brief. I do want to thank Dr. Fox for her work on this bill and for following the lead of the President on that policy you discussed with Mr. Nugent. I'm always a fan of Dr. Fox following President Obama's policies on the rare occasion that it occurs. So thank her. And I thank the Chair for his work on this bill. I was unable to attend the markup, but I know that Dr. Fox and the Chair have worked very hard on this bill. And reauthorization is so overdue. When is the current operative law that we have? What was the date of that law? We're still operating off the WEA law from
1998.
1998. And I remember this well from, I served on the State Board of Education in Colorado, 2000 to 2006. And in Colorado, in the different states, it's divided between labor and education. We had more of the responsibility in our Department of Education and some of the workforce centers in adult education. But at the time, even in 05, 06, we were ready and waiting for the reauthorization. And it came 07, 08. I got elected to Congress. Didn't happen. I thought it would happen after I got elected to Congress. That's what I told my friends. And then we're still working on it. So I hope this is some sort of step in that process. Obviously, the House needs to pass a bill. I understand this bill doesn't have much, if any, Democratic support. Obviously, the Senate and the President have a different perspective. But this is very long overdue work, and I commend Dr. Fox and the Chair for taking it up. Obviously, this is the start of the process, not the end of the process. I hope that it leads to a thoughtful bipartisan reauthorization of WEA, which hopefully many on both sides agree is long overdue, because we're in a very different world and a very different competitive environment than we were in 1998. Things have really changed quite a bit, and that's not ideological. They haven't, changed one way or the other in terms of the philosophy behind the program, but they've actually changed in terms of the jobs that are out there and the need, the education that people need. So I'm very hopeful that the process can move forward. Again, I don't support this version of the bill, but hopefully this will be a step towards the 113th Congress finally reauthorizing WIA, and I know Dr. Fox and the chair will continue to be a part of that, as well as Mr. Hinojosa. Thank you.
Ms. Webster.
Thank you. I feel like I'm caught in some kind of time warp because Florida, just as they did with TANF, also worked amazingly on consolidating these programs, and I will say it worked. When I took an amendment, about $500,000 when I was in the legislature, out of the Department of Labor, and you thought the sky had fallen. But I just wanted to get their attention because I felt like there was 2,500 employees in Tallahassee, our capital, and there were less than 1,000 out in the field getting people jobs. Something was wrong. So it took me 8 years, but I totally eliminated the Department of Labor. And we replaced that with the Agency on Workforce Development. And that particular agency was a combination. We combined workforce dollars with welfare dollars. There is a training component in TANF. There is WIA. There are other dollars, along with there is workforce dollars that the state provides. And by doing that, I'm only testifying to the fact that in consolidating, we saved a lot of money. And I'll tell you the story. Before I did that, I asked the Secretary of Labor to come into my office after I'd sent her a letter, and it took her 3 months, and she never responded. And I said, here's one person. This person lives in my district. Could you tell me what your department does to get this person a job? I promise you that if any of you had been in that meeting, you would have said the Department of Labor needs to go, because she could not answer that problem. This was a Republican appointee as Secretary of Labor and could not tell me how that department could get a job. All I can tell you is after that, we created that workforce Agency for Workforce Innovation. And that agency, combining all these things, just as you do in this bill, and I'm not familiar with the full bill, but I laud you, Mr. Chairman and Vice Chairman, for what you've done, because I know it works. Just to give you sort of an update, even last year, our legislature changed the unemployment tax that every state has to a reemployment tax. And they even take part of those dollars and use them for workforce training. So when you combine workforce training with needs of people in a one-stop place, and we again took all of our people out of Tallahassee and moved them all into the local community so that there were these workforce boards in every single community, it works. And it turns into a place where the secretary can answer, yeah, we can get you a job, and here's how. If we match you, then you can get a job. If you're not, we'll train you and you can get a job. I think that's the way to go, so thank you for what you're doing.
Ms. Ros-Layton. Dr. Burgess.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, let me just ask you a question, because you quoted a figure that got my attention. You said 14% of the people that present for job training actually get the job training? And
That's correct.
And that includes veterans?
That's of the entire population.
The entire population. So there was some concern about eliminating a program that might affect veterans. I just fail to see how we could be against building efficiency in which your bill is trying to do, which Dr. Fox's bill is trying to do. If that's the product we're delivering to our veterans, that's not a great track record. So to be in favor of streamlining the program, cutting the dollars for overhead and improving the dollars for job training and skills, it's just hard to be against that. And I, for one, don't understand the President's deep opposition to that. I guess the good news is if he was really opposed, he'd have issued a veto threat. But do I understand that correctly? That the dollars for veterans, or the actual training for veterans or for all populations, was really that low?
The training was. The dollars, again, were all over the map. We're keeping the same spending level, putting it in one place, continuing to provide services for veterans, insisting that there be a veterans representative in every one-stop, so when a veteran walks in, he's got somebody or she has somebody to identify with, so they can go and get the training they need for a job that's available. There are two veterans programs that we left exactly as they were because of the nature of those two programs. But we were looking to provide better training, not just for veterans, but for all, and we pay special attention to those with particular obstacles to getting the training that they need.
Would the gentleman yield for just one? When you consolidate, we go back to consolidation, you keep hitting on the point that a lot of these programs, obviously there was no oversight, there was no accountability. Will this make it easier for accountability and oversight by having it more directed and focused?
We also, yes, thank you for the question. We also require a common evaluation, and we require the Secretary of Labor every 5 years to go in and evaluate the program to see that it's performing and to provide a report. So we were going from essentially no accountability in some cases to a common performance measure so that we can all see that the taxpayers' money is actually producing what it's supposed to produce.
I thank the gentleman.
I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. The Chair recognizes that you've both taken a lot of time to be with us today. We appreciate not only you taking time to come up and give your expert testimony, but also the time that you've taken in your professional product that you've given us today, and we appreciate you being here very, very much. And
Chairman Sessions, I also want to thank you for allowing me all the time I wanted or needed to express my thoughts and my objections to the bill that is being discussed here. But this list of the programs doesn't say consolidation of 35 programs. It says elimination and consolidation of 35 programs. So I think that the record should be clear that it's very easy and in big letters that everybody can read, that it says 35 programs eliminated and consolidated under H.R. 803.
If the gentleman would yield, what matters is the language in the bill.
yes, well, without objection, if the gentleman would like to enter that into the record, I would offer only accolades for him doing that. And to both of you for taking time to be with us today, we appreciate you are both thanked for being here, and at this time you're given an opportunity to go ahead and vote. I'd like to advise the committee that we are in the middle of beginning 3 votes at this time. If I could make a quick announcement, the chairman was gone for me. I was gone for a few minutes. I was in the back with 4 members of the Dallas City Council, and I want to acknowledge them being here right now: Valencia Jones-Hill, Ann Margolis, Sandy Grayson, and Pauline Medrano, 4 elected super members of the Dallas City Council, and they have taken time to come visit me today, and I did take the time to be with them for a few minutes. I want to thank them for taking time. What is taking place today here in Washington, they find amazing and wanted to be a part of this. What we're trying to debate, obviously, is trying to give local people more hand in what they're doing for jobs and job creation. At this time, I'd like to announce that we're going to go into recess. We'll begin at the start of the last vote of the 3 votes, and at this time, we'll be in recess. Garrett, who's from the Financial Services, the subcommittee chair for capital markets, and the chair recognized we now have a quorum, and we'll go ahead and proceed. And the gentleman, Mr. Tierney, is recognized.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I note that we're winning by attrition here. We're really whittling down the group and on the time, and I appreciate all the time that the committee spent with the last two witnesses and delving deeply into the content of the bill on that. And I hope I can be helpful here today by maybe focusing just a little on process and talking about whether or not we're going to be allowed to have a substitute amendment, because I think that's really the issue. Not so, but I'm happy to debate the contents of the bill, but I'm not sure that's going to be necessary on that. I want to talk a little bit about the idea of trying to work together and getting something done here. You'll all recall that when Speaker Boehner accepted the gavel from Ms. Pelosi at the beginning of the 112th Congress, he offered a commitment to the minority, and I think it was born out of his own experience, perhaps. The Speaker said that those of us in the minority would, and I'm quoting here, always have the right to a robust debate and open process and to offer alternatives. So I'm here for the one simple reason of urging you to uphold the Speaker's commitment and allow us to do just that, to offer our alternative to H.R. 803, the so-called Skills Act. Now, I know that there was comment earlier about unemployment being the result of an absence of an update on the Workforce Investment Act, but I think we all know that was probably just made an error. That's certainly not the cause of our unemployment situation. It's not that the Workforce Investment Act wasn't updated since 1998. We have a lot of other reasons, the financial collapse, the housing market, go on and on and on for the reason of our unemployment. But it is important that we update the 1998 Workforce Investment Act. I mean, it was done at a time when unemployment was a whole different number than it is now. It was done when some of the jobs that we have today didn't even exist. Certain technologies, everything from energy technology to nanoscience and biotechnology or whatever. So obviously we have an opportunity here to do it, and our experience with this bill has always been that it really gets approved and bought into by the public on that when we work together. When we try to find a way to come as a consensus on this. If one party's in the majority and they insist on just getting their way, then that's certainly going to pass whatever body is presented in, whether the House or the Senate. But it doesn't necessarily going to guarantee it gets to the other House or that there's going to be buy-in from the public in the long run. And a Workforce Investment Act is an opportunity for us to have buy-in by the public and buy-in by both parties in the House and the Senate. It's not a partisan issue. It's not an ideological issue. It's an issue of how do we work through. And if we're going to do that, then there has to be a genuine willingness to sit down and make concessions. I think Buck McCain, McCain made a good statement in committee here, and he said basically it happens to be the majority's responsibility to compromise, to try and seek compromise. They've got all the cards. They hold the way where this is going to go, and if you really want to have a bill where there's buy-in and go forward, then they've got to reach across and be willing to make some concessions. And, of course, the minority, by nature of who they are, they're going to make concessions anyway. They don't have all the cards, and they want to get a bill and move it in that direction. So that's the spirit in which we were trying to move this bill and go forward. That's not what's been happening here. And, this bill that's before us today has been moving at warp speed. But it's also a replay of what happened in the last session, and so we can see the writing on the wall. But I want to take a moment to go over and see what happened. This bill was introduced on February 25. On February 26, there was a hearing. At the hearing, the Republican witnesses admitted that they hadn't read the bill. Hadn't been time on it. Yet they were very effusive with their praise for the bill that they hadn't read, and we went through the motions of having that done. But that was the only hearing. And obviously that hearing wasn't a deep dive into anything that was in the bill or should have been in the bill or what needed to be changed. And certainly in response to some of the points that Mr. Hastings made out, there was no discussion of whether or not there had been evaluation of various programs in existence for whether they should be continued, whether they should be consolidated, whether they should be changed, or whether they should be kicked out the door altogether. Now, Mr. Klein said, they made a determination, the members, of what they thought, and he pointed out that the President and the White House apparently made a determination of some that they thought, but nowhere was there a full dive of everybody working together and taking expert advice on that of what exactly should have been done, which programs should be consolidated, which ones should be changed. And that would be helpful. We could have hearings on that and it would work out well, or we could ask other people to do the work and come back and have a hearing and move on that way. That wasn't done. So essentially we had one mindset decide what they thought was best, not even talk to the other side, and certainly not get any independent view of that. A couple of days after that one, as I call, faux hearing, it was set to be marked up on March 6th. Just before the hearing, Ruben Hinojosa and George Miller and I sent a letter over to Ms. Fox and to Mr. Klein and said, look, we need to work on this bill together to have it be bipartisan on that. Can we not sit down member to member, go through this? The way that we've historically done that, and many of you know, no matter what the bill is, if you want to get it done, it's not doing it behind closed doors. It's not being surreptitious. Just sit down member to member and you try to work out some of the problems so that when you get to committee and other amendments are filed, you're pretty much along the way as far as you can go, and you try to then take those things and move forward. We weren't given that courtesy. Now, I do have to tell you, I've been at this for a while. So back in 1998, Buck McKeon had a bill, and we had a bill. And we did just that. We sat down, and we ironed out most of it. Then we went to the committee and had a markup after the hearings and went forward, and that bill has been in. And that bill, everybody got behind. You didn't find people voting against it because the Republicans proposed it or against it because the Democrats proposed it. We actually worked it out, sat down member to member, and went forward. And nobody got everything they wanted, but they got enough on both sides that they could all buy in and go back to the public in sort of a united way and say, you know what? This is a pretty decent bill. We didn't get everything we wanted, but it accomplishes the purpose. We're trying to get people ready for work. And that's what we propose to do. We got no response to that letter, and we started down the path of repeating what happened last time. Last session, we went to markup, 18 amendments, party line votes, done. You know, and when people say, oh, you walked out or whatever, of course we walked out. I mean, nobody wants to replay something that's already got an end result that's known ahead of time. It's a fait accompli. We wanted to sit down member to member and work this thing out, try to get a bill to go. I know that Ms. Fox and Mr. Klein keep saying, well, this is urgent. We really need to move it. Well, doing it this way isn't going to move it because the Senate has already indicated if you're not going to sit down with each other in the House, we're not going to bother taking it up. So that doesn't move anything along. That basically puts a guarantee that nothing's going to happen. Now, you'll be able to say as a majority that you got something through the House, but that's it. I'd rather say, and I hope you'd rather say, that we got a bill. You know, we got a bill and went in, and Congress can get things done that everybody can work with and move forward on that. And that's hopefully, you know, what we really should do. I know that Ms. Fox's bill has essentially no support from any of the stakeholders at all. The bill that we proposed has dozens of people that said they support it. Now, that doesn't mean that I think our bill ought to just be taken over her bill, but I think it does lend itself to the argument that there were some things in our bill that maybe could be incorporated in the other bill and move forward. In fact, not this session, because we barely had a hearing at all, but last session there was a hearing, and all the witnesses, Republicans, Democrats alike, who had read at that time both bills, said that base Republican bill could be improved by some of the things in the Democratic bill. We really would like to see that happen. You know, we went out, we listened to the stakeholders. We worked with them. They have something valuable. They are business people. They are not-for-profit organizations. They are providers. They're community colleges. They're organizations that work with us every day. They're not all stiffs. This is not so broken that everybody that works in the system is a bad person and they just make it work. These are good people that work every day of their life trying to get people hard-pressed back to work or get them into a job in the first place. To just dismissively say, oh, the system's broken and it's no good and throw it out does away with all the good work and hard work that they've done. They've got ideas how it can work better. Like any law, it wasn't perfect, and they've been trying to implement it, and they know, and they were able to share with with us what they think would make it better. And sometimes that was maybe to their own detriment of a particular program, or even to their job. But they understand that this can be done differently, and this can be done better. And it was those suggestions that we tried to incorporate into ours. So it would be, I think, smart to sit down with the White House people, the Department of Labor, Department of Education, Democrats and Republicans, and try to go through and find out the answer to some of these questions and get a bill that isn't just going to fly through the House on a party line vote and be dumped in a wastebasket before it gets to the Senate. You know, at least let's give it a try. That's what we ask for at this point. Is there some way that we just back off a second here? 30 days. Sit down, but everybody that sits down has to be willing to make concessions. If you just sit down and listen to us, do me a favor, don't do it. You're just going to throw in the bucket. But we're willing to make concessions. We understand that some of these programs are going to have to be looked at. We put in our bill that they will be looked at. But I think it's telling that these decisions were made without any real data, without any real consideration or evaluation on that. GAO did not say that there are 47 programs and they're all doing the same thing. It said there are 47 different programs, and some of them overlap. You know, then the question really is, when you evaluate them, are those programs, despite the fact they overlap, really still something that should be kept on their own because they do so much that's unique to a population? Or are they subject to being combined and put into one program? Or should one of them be thrown out altogether and just leave the other one? But we've never had that kind of evaluation independently done. And that each side may have done it on their own means that they should sit down and talk about whose evaluation might be best and what compromise can be worked out on that. That's really what I think is the best on that. It hasn't been done. So now we're in a position, I guess, where that having not been done, I just think that if you would allow us an opportunity to have our version, our substitute heard, then we can certainly debate the bill, what's in our amendment, and everybody have a choice to make and a decision to be heard. And I think if you pick one bill over the other, you're going to think yours is better, we're going to think ours is better, it's going to break down. I think we missed an opportunity, but would like at least the opportunity to debate the content of what our alternative is and some of the ideas we had, and hopefully then be able to vote on that. At the very least, I would hope that the committee thinks that that is something that we should be able to do. So I ask you to allow it, put it in order. I ask you to fulfill Speaker Boehner's promise to give the minority a robust opportunity for a debate on that, and I thank you for the opportunity to be heard here today.
Thank you, gentlemen. Gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
So I thank the chairman, thank the ranking member, and I thank the sponsor of the legislation as well. I will be brief. I am due back to today's budget day. So we're, yay. So sitting back in the budget hearing, but I do appreciate.
But you got a smile on your face.
Well, I'm looking forward till 7 o'clock when the dinner comes over to the budget committee. And no, when I go back, actually, we'll be doing some of these issues. So briefly, sitting back there as I was previously, I was hearing much discussion as far as the effectiveness of the program. Some people saying it was effective, other people saying anecdotally or not that it was not effective. So I just want to point out that in 2011, a GAO report, I think it's referenced already, found that nearly all the federal employment and training programs that they studied tracked multiple outcome measures, but that what little was known about program effectiveness. And of course, you all know we spend upwards to $18 billion on these programs in fiscal year 2009. And so the question, and what did the underlying legislation that Ms. Fox do? They tried to, or you did look at this issue and put in, I think, meaningful workplace evaluation programs in the bill, which is great. And that will hopefully give you the results that you're looking for to find out how effective these programs are. However, I also remind you that when the Workforce Investment Act was started, or when they came up for reauthorization once before, they mandated, like previous Congress mandated a large-scale evaluation over at the Department of Labor job training programs. And they required at that time studies to be done to come back to this Congress in the year 2005. It was not, though, however, until 2007, 2 years after that report was required, that they finally actually started working on doing that report, and they will not have that evaluation now until 2015, exactly 10 years after the study and evaluation was required. So it's all well and good that legislation is requiring a study to look at the effectiveness. We're just suggesting that maybe one step further is to have an impetus, if you will, an encouragement that these studies actually be done in a timely manner. And with that, I will conclude and yield back to the chairman.
Thank you very much. By the way, without objection, if the gentleman have anything in writing, we will accept that into the testimony.
Not unless the chairman wants to the thing.
I do recognize, Mr. Tierney, that you have taken time to work on this alternative. What are 2 or 3 of the ideas that you spoke about that you really believe that were not included in the legislation that you would have wished to have seen that would be contained within your substitute?
Well, one of the major points I mentioned on a broad scale of that is the ability to sit down and work with the majority on deciding if there are going to be programs that are consolidated or merged or something like that, which should be, which shouldn't be. I think we're open to the idea that we might be able to be persuaded that some should. We would hope that the majority be open to persuasion where it's appropriate that some shouldn't on that. So I think we need that discussion and talk about what information we each have, which would indicate somebody's argument is stronger the other way. We have a strong role of community colleges in our bill. In my experience going out and talking particularly with my technology businesses, that they really could benefit from some internship programs. Internship programs and apprenticeships, and a strong component of working with the industries and the community college to provide curriculum to get people retooled, even people that are out of college in some instances but might not have had a technical background, get them retooled in the right way to move into that. That's a large difference in the 2 bills on that. The ability to expand access to post-secondary education credentials on that basis and move that in. We want to make sure that individuals get the training that they need in unique areas. We want to make sure that the stakeholders' ability to participate is strengthened on that. We agree that the boards can tend to get unwieldy, but we think the majority's way of dealing with that might even lead to being bigger boards instead of more consolidated boards on that. And we want to provide for an opportunity, a better opportunity than we think the bill does, the skills bill does, to have a wider variety of people on the board, whatever its size. Representation from community colleges and non-for-profits, other providers, veterans, things of that nature, then we don't think that theirs allows for as much of that as it could be and would be beneficial to everybody. We want to make sure that there's some innovation funds so that there are better attempts at dealing with people particularly hard to serve, high-poverty communities that tend not to get it. And we have an issue with giving so much authority to the governors. We have a responsibility here with federal taxpayer dollars to be accountable for where they go. And if as a Congress we decide that veterans need a particular service, but we're going to leave it up to the governor to either give them or not give it or whatever, how are we accountable for that? I would think it's a more reasonable argument. If you really think the states should be making the decision around the programs, then let them fund them. Let them raise state taxes and go and fund them. But basically, we've made a decision. We think it's a national issue, that just being one example, and we're going to put national resources towards it, then we have to be accountable, whether it's spent well and having a result. So those are just a few of the things that we talked about.
Good. Thank you very much. By the way, previous testimony that I believe that was given, and I'll let the author of the bill address this. She'll be given time here in just a second. But the highlights, we're talking about 17 to $18 billion. And part of the testimony also revealed that there is, I guess, in writing, a guarantee that there will be a veterans component within this board to be done. And I do appreciate the gentleman trying to highlight those areas, and it's my hope that as we continue this hearing that some of that will be flushed out as to the maintenance.
Can I just quickly say that? So if the bill provides that it may be done, it's not the same as providing that it will be done. And providing like 5%, that a governor could put 5% towards certain programs but doesn't have to, doesn't really accomplish that purpose. If you get a governor who just decides they don't want to do it, even though we think it's important, then if you've given them the authority to do it, it's going to be cut out. So that's the sense where they might characterize that as, oh, it's provided for, but in essence, it's a wish list.
Interesting. Well, I am delighted that you are both here, and do believe that a 14% in essence success rate that the program has been producing up to now means that we should be here and we should be willing to not only talk about making it better, but we should give people the local flexibility to do that. Dr. Fox.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think we've had good debate on this bill. We had good debate in the committee, in the hearing that we held. It's unfortunate that our colleagues walked out and did not offer their amendments in the committee and give us an opportunity to debate what their concerns were. It was their choice that they walked out. We did not close off debate on this issue. We did not refuse to hear amendments. It is the Democrats who walked away and gave up the opportunity to make this a bipartisan bill. I think it is long overdue. The program hasn't been reauthorized since 1998, and it needs to be done. As other people have said, others on the committee that day when we had the hearing and we had the markup, this bill looks to the future in terms of creating jobs or helping people get into jobs. If these programs had been effective, and I would say they don't have a 14% success rate, they have an 86% failure rate. And that's unacceptable for hardworking taxpayers like the people I represent who work hard and pay their taxes and expect to see us be efficient and effective with their dollars. I'm very sensitive to that issue, very sensitive to people who are going out and working every day. I'm also very sensitive to the people who are unemployed and who are so frustrated because they are unemployed and they look to their government for answers. And they find no answers. They find nobody showing them how they can get a job. And I think that we have a responsibility when we know that something can be made better. Our colleague from Florida was very eloquent in his comments about what's happened in Florida. Texas has excellent programs. In states where they have done this already, it's working very well. And I take the position that it's a lot easier to influence legislators and influence governors than it is to come here and get things accomplished. And so I think when you put things down to the state and local level, these workforce boards have a lot of influence and they will have a lot of opportunity. And again, an 86% failure rate says it's not working as it is. And most of what you all want to do is the status quo. And I'm just not willing to support the status quo. And, Mr. Chairman, we will have a rule, I believe, in a moment that will that will be fair in all ways. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hastings? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, you used the term $18 billion in the Workforce Investment Act insofar as government funding is concerned. Would that figure stem from the period at the peak of the recession through the Recovery Act? Statistics that I have reflected it's now $2.6 billion.
Thank you very much. I will defer to the gentlewoman to answer.
Dr. Fox?
Mr. Hastings, that's a really good question that you've asked. The totality of spending on workforce investment programs is $18.1 billion. We're only talking about a segment of the workforce investment programs, only those that fell into the jurisdiction of the Ed and Workforce Committee and two bills which the Veterans Committee gave us jurisdiction over. So that's the discrepancy in the money. The 18.1 is what's spent every year on these programs. And I'll stand corrected from the staff. I think there have been about three figures that have been thrown around.
Right, a lot of figures have been thrown around, and you all have been using the 14% figure.
Would the gentleman yield just
of course,
a moment? I thank the gentleman. I would just say to the chairman, I know my friend from New Jersey is given the committee all the deference that the committee deserves, but he has a vote coming up in the Budget Committee.
I have no questions of Mr. Garrett, and he may be surprised to know that I vigorously support the effort in his amendment. I think it makes an awful lot of sense, and we'll be voting for it if it's made in order.
I thank the gentleman.
But I do have a question of Mr. Tierney.
We will come right back to you with your concurrence. I'd like to ask if anybody else on the committee has a question for the gentleman, Mr. Garrett. Mr. Garrett, thank you very much for taking time to be here, and I'm sure that means that Mr. Woodall will be leaving with you. And I would once again now come back to the gentleman.
Thank you very much,
yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman. As I was saying, a lot of statistics have been thrown around. I would be remiss. I spoke earlier about being a board member of the early on development of these programs. And one of my best friends in the whole of this area is a fellow named Denny Abbott that has spent his entire career trying to help people to train for work. And I talked with him on various occasions about the statistics. And he attests to a significant amount of success, and I believe my colleague, the former Speaker of the House of Florida, was correct in asserting that the Florida programs did do a good job, and we stand to do some bragging, but we still have national concerns. A man named Anthony Carnevale, the director and research professor at the Georgetown University Center on Education and the Workforce, reflected recently that more than 8 million job seekers utilize workforce investment programs. And 71.2% of adult participants who received training services found jobs, and 80.6% of dislocated workers who received training found jobs. Now, I don't have any reason to accept or reject that particular statistic, but referencing back to Denny Abbott, I do know that they have extraordinary success with the program that's referred to as Workforce One, and it's way beyond 14%. As a matter of fact, it's closer to the 65 or 70% that the professor at Georgetown seems to reflect upon. But let me turn to Mr. Tierney and highlight from the language in the bill as offered, reading from page 87, and the section that says statewide grants for individuals with barriers to employment. In general, and without the preference, it speaks of the funds reserved as described in this section. The governor of a state may reserve up to 5% to provide technical assistance to and conduct evaluations as described in this particular section. And as I heard you, Mr. Attorney, I would imagine that you're contemplating this particularly nuanced aspect of what a governor may or may not do. I heard you say words to that effect. And does your substitute contemplate that particular aspect of this legislation as offered?
Well, it does. Our substitute actually allows for all of those that need of services, even those with unique services, to get a focused attention that they need, and it doesn't leave it entirely to the discretion of some other party to use up a small percentage and then have the ability to not serve them at all. So I think one of the things that makes sense, if it's our federal taxpayers' money for which we're responsible and accountable, we ought to decide whether or not we think a group is going to get services would be a good thing or not. And not just kick the can down the road to somebody else.
And I thank you for the time, Mr. Chairman. At the outset of this hearing, you indicated that there would be a robust discussion, and I thoroughly believe that that has occurred, and I thank you for that. And I'm hopeful that tomorrow, when this rule is presented, that this substitute, which I vigorously support, will be included in that rule so that that robust discussion can continue. And in spite of the process failure inside the committee, where my side decided to walk out. I didn't know about that until the day, and it doesn't matter whether I knew or didn't know. I'm not on the committee, but the simple fact remains that this substitute, as offered, would be a good opportunity for us to have a full discussion of both sides' points of view with reference to something that's particularly significant in this country. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and I appreciate the gentleman not only offering that clarification, but asking to make sure that I was saying the right thing, and I appreciate putting that in context and the gentlewoman for responding. Mr. Bishop?
Let me just say two quick things. First of all, I do not criticize you for walking out. I led a walkout of one of my committees when we were in the minority. The only difference was we stopped the bill, so I'm sorry. Yeah, you're not as effective. Second concept is I served on the minority in this particular committee for 4 years. I know the frustration you have expressed today. Trust me, I know the frustration you have expressed today. So I wish you well. There is one question I'd like to ask specific to your bill, because obviously we talked about funding levels. This is an authorization, correct? So it doesn't fund Jack. It's an authorization. What is the authorization level of your bill?
For my bill?
Yeah.
You know, I'd have to go back and find the section on that. Maybe staff can do on that. But it does not cap it the way that the majority has capped it. You know, and hold it even on that.
So it's the same. Are you telling me it's roughly the same?
Yeah. It's such sums. I wasn't sure if we put a certain number on that or whatever, but it's such sums so that every year the appropriations process will determine what's necessary, where the majority's bill just absolutely flatlines it for the next several years on that basis.
I see. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. 6 years. I'm sorry. But it's 6. Okay. Okay.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? Mr. Turner, the committee wants to thank you for taking your time today, for you appearing, and I'd like to, if I can, address really your comments. Your comments don't fall on deaf ears.
Good. Well, I appreciate that.
We're trying our very best to not only make sure we're open for work and duty here at the Rules Committee, we're trying to accept ideas and amendments. We're trying to work on a bipartisan basis, up to and including, really, Mr. Tierney, a great staff that you have up here at the Rules Committee.
and that the majority has. We're trying to work what I believe is in a way to alleviate frustrations about some of the points of orders and the rules. And I think that you perhaps benefited a great deal from the support of your staff up here in the preparation of that to ensure compliance with the rules of the House, with the rules that this committee would have to deal with. And so I applaud you for that.
Thank you. And just if I could briefly, Mr. Bishop, I appreciate that you respect how we're feeling and going on that. But as I said at the beginning, I think that Speaker Boehner's promise to us was born out of that frustration. It's at some point in time it has to stop and start in another direction, and I hope this is it. Thank you.
Well, and I do not only agree with that, but I recognize that also. If I could, I started down a pathway of allowing you to be excused. I noticed that one of our members, the gentleman from Colorado, has appeared, and I wanted to offer him, Mr. Polis, an opportunity if he would so choose.
I just want to thank Mr. Tierney for his hard work, along with our ranking member Miller, on the substitute, and I hope it's made in order. And I yield back.
Thank you very much. I would, before the gentleman leaves, I would want to make a comment here because it's perhaps a bipartisan comment. Governor Markell of Delaware has taken on an initiative with the Governors Association on behalf of disabled people and ensuring that not only disabled people have more opportunities, but also through this process that we're talking about today to make sure that their representatives on these work boards understand their needs, that business see the attributes of many disabled people who would stand a chance to be great employees. And I think probably every single member of this Rules Committee in one way or another is deeply involved back home, whether it be veterans, whether it be disabled people, whether it be displaced people, whether it be someone who, by accident or fault of perhaps nothing of their own, losing their job, to reassemble their life based upon training and making their life better. And I want you to know that we believe, and I believe not just the ranking member, but also the chairman and you have taken time to come with your ideas today, and we appreciate and thank you for doing that. And so the gentleman's excused. Seeing no further witnesses that would seek any testimony today, this hearing portion of H.R. 803 is now closed. The chairman will be in receipt of a motion from the gentlewoman from North Carolina, Dr. Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee grant H.R. 803, the Skills Act, a structured rule. The rule provides 1 hour of general debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Education and the Workforce. The rule waives all points of order against consideration of the bill. The rule makes an order as original text for purpose of amendment, an amendment in the nature of a substitute consisting of the text of Rules Committee Print 113-4 and provides that it shall be considered as read. The rule waives all points of order against the amendment in the nature of a substitute. The rule makes an order only those amendments printed in the Rules Committee report. Each such amendment may be offered only in the order printed in the report, may be offered only by a member designated in the report, shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and an opponent, shall not be subject to amendment, and shall not be subject to a demand for division of the question. The rule waives all points of order against the amendments printed in the report. Finally, the rule provides one motion to recommit with or without instructions.
You've now heard the motion of the gentlewoman from North Carolina, and I would defer to the gentlewoman for an explanation of the rule. Gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a structured rule. It provides for 1 hour debate controlled by the Committee on Education and Workforce. The Rules Committee received 13 amendments, 5 of which were withdrawn. Of the remaining 8 amendments, 6 were made in order, including all of the remaining amendments submitted by Democrats. The Democrat substitute was made in order with extended debate time. This is an exceedingly fair rule and allows the minority a fair opportunity to argue for their approach.
I thank the gentlewoman. Is there
further discussion or any amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment to the rule. I move the committee grant H.R. 803 an open rule so that all members have the opportunity to offer amendments to the bill on the floor. Mr. Chairman, I concur with much of what Dr. Fox has said, and I'm particularly pleased that Don Young's and Mr. Cole's and Ms. Noem's amendment is made in order, as well as I spoke to the Garrett amendment, and I am also pleased that the Rules Committee has accepted these amendments today. The Skills Act started out in a highly partisan manner, of which has been pointed out here, that led Democrats of the Education and Workforce Committee to walk out of their markup. If there was ever a bill to deserve an open process, that would be it. This, in my judgment, would be one that we can. And I appreciate the extent that you've gone. I move to make this an open rule and to allow all members the opportunity to offer their amendments on the House floor. It's been pointed out we have 84 new members. We have new members of the Education and Workforce Committee, and a lot of us didn't walk out. We get our say up here in the Rules Committee, but some members may, if there were an open rule, have an opportunity to make presentations. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. We now continue to debate on the Hastings amendment. I believe that what we have done in the rule is fair, it's proper. I believe it takes into account not only the hard work and the recognition of hard work on behalf of members, in this case Democratic members, to not only comply themselves with the rules that we have to deal with, but also in relation to the substitute. And I think you heard me offer praise on behalf of the gentleman who sought that substitute. He was welcome in this committee. We tried to make sure that all the debate time that was necessary, each of the members were afforded those things that they needed. And further, that the gentlewoman, Mrs. Fox, has alluded to additional time that would be available on the floor. With that said, I would offer support of a no vote on the Hastings amendment. So is further discussion? All those in favor of the Hastings amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? No. The noes have it. I would now go ahead and move to the motion that's being made from the gentlewoman from North Carolina. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay. Thank you very much. Those in favor of the motion by the gentlewoman signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Okay. This will be managed by Dr. Fox for the Republicans and Mr. Ponis on behalf of the minority. Congratulations to both of you. It is my hope that the debate that took place today, the same spirit would follow forth on the floor. I do not anticipate a further Rules Committee meeting this week, and so we are now. We believe it will be on tomorrow in afternoon.
That waft of smoke that came over from and maybe working with us.
We're now adjourned.
Absolutely. We're trying.